I want to have practical takeaways. I don't want to just talk about the what and the why things are the way they are. I want to also have practical takeaways. What now? How can we grow in this? And how can we be better people? Hey everybody, welcome back. It's Rosalie. Welcome to this channel. Subscribe as we're growing. Join the ride. We're going to check out a video that is a conversation with the very viral, controversial, interesting Andrew Tate. Without going into too much detail about who he is known for I'm top G. He is an American British media personality. If you look up who he is as a person, that's his title. And he's gone viral, I think, for all kinds of controversial, intense, shocking statements that are labeled either misogynist or very radical in their takes. And there's a whole lot of conversations around him. But I want to check out this debate, and we'll see what we can pull out of it.
I respect that you can then tell her, I want you to do this, babe, and she has to listen.
You're right, but
a lot of women, they want autonomy over themselves. Personally, I don't want a man that's going to provide for me just so he can tell me to sit down and I'm a dog and I'm going to sit down.
Let's understand
because I can make my own decisions too.
Let's understand something. Every man will give you a life. It's just a matter of whether you're happy with the life that man.
Right, this is starting strong, right? Video's even titled Heated Debate. This is interesting. We got a bunch of women and Andrew Tate. This is going to be interesting.
Afford it, though.
No, exactly. Every man will give you a life. It's just a matter of whether you're happy with the life that man is capable of giving. And
now that's true. He's already saying it depends on if you're happy with it. Everyone can give you a life. It could be a life of poverty on the streets, still a life. But are you happy with it?
This goes back into the earlier points we were saying. You can find a good man who will work his ass off and give you the best life he can possibly give you every ounce of strength inside of him. He'll give you all he has. You can get that. But if you're going to wake up and go, no, I don't want that life. I want that life. Well, then that comes with problems.
Yeah,
and this is the cognitive dissonance that most females operate under, where they sit and go, I want that life, but I want him to act like that guy.
Okay, that's interesting. Cognitive dissonance. Let's get psychological here. This is a word that I think people are becoming more aware of. It's basically this idea that your thoughts and the way you view the world doesn't line up with your actions. And if you have contradictory values, say you believe one thing or you claim you believe one thing, have a certain perspective, but then you act differently. I think that's kind of what he's implying here. Let's keep going.
I want the Nissan and the McLaren. You can't have both.
What about
you need to decide? And there becomes a degree of female maturity. As you said earlier, you get to a point where you're like,
what do you think, guys? Do you think that that's true? That a lot of women have that dissonance? They want one thing, but they act differently, or they say they want this, but they follow this, but they want this instead.
Like, you know what? Maybe all that glitz and glam and bullshit isn't worth it.
It's not worth it.
You grow up, right?
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. And you make a different decision. And I'm saying that a lot of women get to that point. The problem is, in the modern world, the shit women did before they got to that point, from 19 to 24, pisses the man off to the point where he's never going to be as good as he could be. It's different in your world, right? You met a man, you stayed with that man, ding. I know plenty of people.
Oh, snap. We're getting real here. Okay, interesting. So he's saying you got women that are getting older, more mature, that realize what social media sells, what they thought they wanted in a man is no longer that important. I see validity in that. You get older, you realize maybe you want a man who values marriage and children, and it's not all about, going viral on TikTok or looking cute or going to the club or having a guy that can drive you around in some fancy sports car. And that glitz and glam, like Andrew Tate is saying, fades as you mature and you realize more what you want. I think that goes for men and women, where we see a development in our desires as we develop into who we are. I mean, it's funny because even when I was 19, 20 years old, I had the psych professor's wife have a session with me, and she reminded me that between 19 and 25, and that age range is probably widened now in our day and age, you don't even know who you are and what you want. And it was almost like a relief to me. She reminded me it's okay to not know what the heck's going on and who you are. Because I just, from growing up and my personality, I constantly felt this sense like I have to have the answers. I've got to get it right. This huge, immense pressure. And realizing there was a level of relief to go, it's okay that I don't have life figured out yet. Because I was so intense and strict and harsh on myself, and I felt like I had to get it all right. And I think even the difference from 19 to 25 is a huge jump, not to mention 25 to 35. I mean, so much happens, so much life happens. We change who we are and what we want.
First man, high school sweethearts. The world was different only 40, 50 years ago. The second man, they've been married forever, 50-year marriages. All that shit's gone. And then we have to tie back into all the other sub-points I've made. Into you've had a very fun life at your peak sexual value from 19 to 24 running around doing X, Y, Z. Now you're with this guy who can't give you the life he knows you've already lived. Part of him feels inferior. His status is damaged because all the shit you did is on Instagram and he ain't the one who gave it to you.
Okay, so we're getting real up in here. So I could see validity in that. A lot of men, and I mentioned that in another video, who may be acting all tough and they express what they want, right? But underneath, there's certain insecurities because they want to please the woman. They want to be important and lead and have her admiration. Which man doesn't want admiration? We're girls and women want love. Men want that respect, that admiration. And many of them have to put on this tough leadership facade. Not that it's a facade, it's genuine. They do want to lead and be strong. But they have to be a certain way outside in the world amongst other men in that world out there. When they come home, they have other needs and they long for a safe place just as much as we want to be safe when we come home. We want to feel sheltered and loved and appreciated. For a man to want to have a wife that admires him, but knowing that she's already had her first love and she's been with all these dudes, it's interesting to see these debates because it definitely changes the conversation, where we went to the other extreme in recent years that tapped into, oh, we should be able to do whatever we want, and women empowerment. And I'll admit it, even I have an issue with the fact that when men sleep around, they're called players. When women sleep around, they're called whores. I have a big issue with that. But even in conversations with my husband and us discussing how we want to instill certain values in our children and how we want to communicate values in our daughters and in our son, even there, these conversations came up, and it helped me understand even the male perspective. Our desire for both the male and female children is that they have certain morals and that they want to live a life of purity and honor and find the right partner and not go out there and sleep around. But what it does with women overall, generally speaking, is still different than what it does with boys, where women will feel used a lot of times and will have their hearts broken more easily. What sleeping around does for men has different effects. It's wrong for both. That's why I don't like that the word whore is a more negative connotation than the word player. Player sounds more fun and playful. And for the longest time, it was glorified. Yo, player, hey, all these chicks he's been with. And then the woman, it's like, you nasty, dirty, and used. No wonder women dislike that. Who wants to be looked at as broken and used? That will trigger existential fears real quick. But I believe it's wrong for both men and women. And I speak from experience. It causes different things, though, in different people. Where with men, I think, and this is something I learned from my husband, too, it'll be a huge distraction. They might not have their heart broken and feel dirty and used, but it'll be a distraction. They get a girl pregnant, God forbid, now they've ruined their high school or college trajectory or their career. Now they may end up marrying her or having to pay child support. Sleeping around will have different effects on the man and will change and affect his life. It'll be a distraction from the greatness he could achieve if he was focused and honorable and have integrity and purity. And it'll have different effects on the girl, where she may feel used or dirty or have her heart broken or get pregnant and now have a responsibility, often more responsibility than the male that was involved. So it's wrong on both sides, and I'd still dislike the fact that we've given a more negative versus positive name if it's a man or a woman that sleeps around. But ultimately, it is a fact that it affects people differently. And when we pass that on to the next generation, this message of, hey, there's beauty in waiting. There's beauty in not just sleeping around. And we counter this unhealthy extreme of, yo, just have fun. And we're encouraging people just to live a very promiscuous, unhealthy life that comes with consequences. It does need to be sold, if you will, presented in different ways, because men will receive it differently than women. And I think Mr. Tate here has an interesting point, because men will want that admiration from the woman. Men will want to be respected and admired by his wife. But how can he if he has to measure up to all that glam she lived out in her young years?
And now you're expecting a whole bunch of crap out of him. And now when he comes and works his ass off and manages to save up and buy a BMW and picks you up, hey, I got a BMW, you go, yeah, I like Mercedes. And this is the point you're missing. It's not about the fucking car. It's about something larger than that.
I don't know what type of chicks he's talking about though. That sounds like some seriously toxic females. Honestly, I don't think every woman would be like that. There's plenty of people that are proud, would be proud about that or excited about it. But I think we also have to keep in mind here, a lot of these debates that happen, and this is one of the reasons I started this channel, I want to have practical takeaways. I don't want to just talk about the what and the why things are the way they are. I want to also have practical takeaways. What now? How can we grow in this? And how can we be better people? Especially if we have a past. God knows I have one, and things have been redeemed and worked out wonderfully. And I've also had to do the work, and am still doing the work to work on myself. But where's the practical takeaways? And I think that's why a lot of these conversations are so interesting, because it polarizes. It's provocative, it polarizes, but it's also valid facts. Though he's probably speaking about a certain group of people. A lot of the people that are going to be putting all their stuff on Instagram, or these girls that are trying to become famous by being TikTok models and put themselves out there like God knows what, but then want to have a good man and a good marriage, or they act like I want a Mercedes instead of a BMW. To me, that also sounds like a specific group in Western culture, and it really depends on who you talk to. This does not go for everybody. There's people in Christian or religious circles that don't live this type of life, though there are also many of them. I think that doesn't go for all men and all women. I think this is a specific niche of Insta, TikTok, glam mindset. I feel
it's about making him feel like he's a man again and that he's in charge.
A woman shouldn't have to make a man feel like a man.
You're sitting here going, I'm an autonomous female. I can fucking like that. But what are you doing? You're damaging the psyche of the man who's trying to love you.
Okay, I just heard that female in the background say I shouldn't have to make a man feel a man. Here's the thing. We sure as heck like when men value us and make us feel pretty. If a woman comes in dressed cute, having made an effort to look pretty, and she's looking for that admiration from her husband, she wants him to think that want you to make me feel like I'm the only girl in the world, right? Which woman doesn't want that? In a crowd of women and fish in the sea, which woman doesn't want to feel like she's queen A, not even B? You know, like, we want a man to make us feel womanly. Now, is he in charge to fix all our insecurities? No, we've got to do the hard work internally. But it's still nice to be reassured. It's still nice to be treated like a woman, and for him not to treat us like, yo, bro, like we're one of the dudes, or just a friend, or his mama, right? We want to be treated like his queen. And if we women want that same respect, we don't get to say to a man, I shouldn't have to make you feel like a man. Of course, if he has insecurities, he has to do the work internally. But it's sure as heck nice to be acknowledged and respected. We have a lot of double standards a lot of time.
Is it worth it for a
But what
fucking
do you
car
mean by
brand?
loving? Can we break it down? Can we break it down? Does loving mean that you listen to what I have to say and also think about what I want and not just what you want?
It's not about
Is that what loving means? If that's it, I can subscribe to that. But I'm not going to subscribe to sit down and you have to sit down.
It's not about that.
I'm a grown-ass woman. I pay my own bills and you're going to tell me what to do?
That's fine. But it gets to a point. It gets to a point where you have to sit and analyze.
I don't think many men, well, there are men like that. I don't think all men that want a submissive wife even mean that, though. Sit down. I would not. I consider myself a mix between old-fashioned and modern, and I sure as heck don't want to be treated like a dog. Sit and I sit. But I don't think that a healthy, balanced man, and I'm not saying that Tate is, I don't know him that well, I'm not saying that a holistic, balanced man who says, I like a woman who is submissive, means that. Sit down like a dog.
The scenario you're in and try and realize and pick your battles. And I'm telling you, you may not realize it, but a man does a whole bunch of shit for you.
It's interesting how calm he stays. Maybe they're getting heated now to also add, to make it more interesting for the viewer. I'm not sure how genuine this is. It's definitely heated, but that's funny because this chapter in the YouTube video is titled Women Talk Nonsense. Men are so simple. How does that make you feel? These are funny titles, chapters in the video.
That you don't know. He's watching the shows you want to watch. He's listening to you talk gossip about the girls at work. He's fucking going, yeah, I like that dress, that dress. He doesn't give a fuck about any of it. He's doing it for you.
See, that's
but the second it's back the other way.
Okay, correction. Well, I work from home, but that's not always true. Most of the shows my husband and I watch are shows that he likes. Now, I like him too, works out, but there's not ever, hardly ever a time where I'm like, I want to watch this super cheesy chick flick. I'll just do that on my own time. But I will agree with him in a whole host of other topics, and I'm sure this applies to certain women. There are a lot of things that guys do, and that goes both ways. But I think this whole movement lately, some of the extremes of the red pill, then we got, this purple pill podcast talking about maybe we can have an alternative. We got Officer Tatum talking about finding a balance. Obviously, not everybody's just blue or red, and the world will have it look like it because polarization brings money and views and shock value. But fact of the matter is we're all somewhere in the middle, most likely. Most of us can find common ground. And I think that, what was I going to say? Crap. And I think that a lot of that movement happening lately with these talks about feminism and masculinity are coming from a place of men wanting to be valued. I'm not talking about the toxic mindset that goes, I'm just going to use women, recycle them, the younger the better, and anything bad like that. I'm talking about a healthy mix where a man can be committed and be loyal to his wife, a good husband and father, but he also can be valued as a man and for what he brings to the table. In our desire to be valued as women, because we do a whole host, from running the household to running a job to trying to look good and be attractive, and there's a whole lot of pressure on women and what we should be, ideally what we want to be. To be fair, and this is also something I have been having to learn from my husband a bit, it's not always just coming from the men. Even though men statistically in certain places control certain markets, it's not just coming from the men. It's also coming from the women. I'm not talking about human trafficking and sex trafficking and situations where people are forced to horrendous things. I'm not talking about that right now. I'm talking about where women choose, say, to seek a profession where they sell their bodies and they're promiscuous. They're not being forced to do this. They're doing this because it's quick money, because maybe they think they can not do anything better, or it's just easier. A lot of us women are also shooting ourselves in the foot when we present ourselves a certain way. It is never okay for a man to cross our boundaries, rape, take away without our consent. Never. But at the other extreme is to say we should be able to do whatever we want as women with no consequences. If I were to dress a certain way on this screen and then shame, accuse, or condemn you for looking in certain places, that's hypocritical, right? Obviously, I dressed a certain way to get a certain response, and it's not fair for me to go, how dare you not look in my eyes, right? And I'm not saying that it's ever a woman's fault when she is assaulted. Never should that be okay for someone to take something from someone else without consent. But that goes both ways. Women taking from men when it comes to finances and money, saying, oh, you better, you owe me, you're the man, you should pay, you should do all this because that's what men do. Isn't that a similar mindset? I'm not saying it's the same thing as rape. Gosh, don't twist my words. But it's the similar mindset of, I can take something that's not mine because, this is how the world works. It's toxic too. Just as much as a man thinks a woman needs to give it up for him if he paid for dinner on a date, or can take from a woman because he wants and has some urge. And we women can't go, oh, men should be doing this and this and that, and they owe, and that's unhealthy. And I think these movements are occurring because men are going, wait a minute, I bring a whole lot to the table. It's not just women that bring a whole lot. Men bring a whole lot too. And I think in many circles, in certain circles, men have been made to look very small, like, But it's like, no, they're working hard. They're trying to provide, the good men out there, trying to provide, trying to do what's right. And they're doing things for their girl. And I think that's kind of what he's talking about here. They're trying to make the woman happy. And that's where we have to realize context. You can't tell a woman who's given her all, been the perfect girl, been playing wife for some dude that's not willing to marry her, who's cheating on her. You can't tell a woman like that, oh, men need to be respected. Her experience has been douchebag after douchebag. But she's also now as an adult going to have to take action and heal herself to step away from those type of men. We're talking about guys that are actually trying to provide and actually want to be men.
You have some fucking issue with autonomy.
Right.
It's
he's
bullshit.
Right. Listen, he's right, because women talk nonsense for a long time. And they say like, yeah, babe, you're right. Yeah, babe, can't believe she did that.
I wonder if he's getting so angry, to add to the dynamics, to add to his brand and make the podcast more interesting, or if he's been hurt in that sense. Sometimes with some of the things I see and the way he acts, I'm like, wonder if this is also speaking from personal experience and hurt.
It's true, babe. Oh, yeah, that show is good. Yeah, babe. Yeah, it's true. You become
I agree. Men do a lot, but women do a lot too.
Well, there's a lot more in this podcast. I might look at some more of it later. Let's skip to value.
She said, Andrew, I want to hear. I really, because you've been through a lot in your life. When she told me that you were going to be on and we were going to be on this panel together, I started watching a bunch of your videos, and it really was like there's so much that you have been through, which is why you have a well of wisdom, right? And the difference between me and you is that you're glorified for it, and I am burned at the stake for everything that I've been through. And it's so funny because people have always said that we were two sides of the same coin, as far as like, well, if Andrew Tate gets banned, Brittany Renner should get banned, because we are all about.
Why do you think that is? Do you think that's true? That she's seen as used goods, he's seen as a highly valued man. Why do you think that is?
What's next?
Yeah, it's really interesting. And it's interesting you make that observation, and you are correct. That's the difference between the masculine and the feminine. It's unfair, I guess. The world's not fair, but that's the difference between the masculine and the feminine.
I appreciate that. Those moments when I hear him say something like this and he's spitting facts and he's doing it in a fairly humble way, those moments I think, this is not as misogynistic as he's being presented. Though I'm sure there's also very controversial misogynistic things that he has said. I don't know. I have to look into that some more. But in this moment, I'm like, okay, he's spitting facts, and yeah, he's intense about it. And some of it maybe his persona and brand, right? He's established it so far now that even if some of it wasn't 100% genuine, he can't back away from it now, because that'll not do so good for the numbers probably. But his brand is this, and he's even saying things in a balanced way right now, because that isn't fair. A woman to be seen as damaged goods while the man is glorified when they both have the same past and they both have similar experiences, that isn't fair.
And men are respected for going through things and surviving, and women are the complete opposite. They're shamed for going through things and surviving. If you look at women, love scars on men for a reason. He's gone through something. They're lived.
War wounds.
Yeah, they're war. Men don't want a chick covered in scars.
That's actually valid.
I'll say this right now.
That's actually a very valid point. Men and women do value different things, and a woman will want someone who's been through stuff, who knows how to fight. A man doesn't want a woman that's been all beat up and banged up. They want something that's attractive and smooth, and I guess many do.
A woman, the more trauma she goes through, the more masculine she naturally becomes. And if you were to give me my ideal woman, I would not have wanted her to have a hard life and a bunch of trauma. I like the idea of her having a soft feminine life and being a soft person, and I can take care of her and protect her. Whereas as a man, to be a good man, you need to have been through a bunch of trauma, because if you haven't been through trauma as a man, you're a weakling. You have to have been through a bunch of shit. So the masculine...
Oh, snap. Okay, that's valid. That is actually really valid. When you see a lot of men who haven't been through stuff, they've been living in a mama's basement, and they've been getting things handed to them, there's no life experience. They'll have a harder time leading, and they probably will be respected less by women. Women, we do become more masculine and harsh with trauma we go through. And since a man is drawn to tenderness, that makes it harder to then get what he wants. And as triggering as I can see that being, even as a woman, to be like, because I've been through trauma and harshness, and I can be masculine in my energy, and I have still to do that healing work in certain areas. While that can be triggering to be like, you know what I mean? Like, what do you want? Soft woman. I'm not soft, whatever. And then you get defensive. It's valid, because if we have the right to tell a man what we prefer, and we don't like a weakling man, and that's genuinely what we prefer, and nobody can come around and be like, you should be okay with a weak man. You should be okay with a guy that lives in his mama's basement and doesn't have a job and daddy pays it all. You should be okay with a man who doesn't know how to, put on a spare tire and fix things and take care of you. That should be fine, because you're an independent woman. As much as I don't want to be told what I'm supposed to like, because I don't like that, we can't do that to men. And I think what we need to recognize, and this is where we're going to get practical, some of the reasons why women will get defensive at such conversations is because it triggers existential fears. Those of us who have been through trauma, who do have scars, who are not as young anymore, who have experience or a higher body count number, that will really quickly trigger existential fears, because what we all want, men and women, what we all struggle with is death anxiety and existential fears. What we all want is to be loved and to love and to have value. We want our life to matter. When our death comes, like Sartre even said, and I'll paraphrase in my own way, when our life comes to an end, that last heartbeat should ideally fall on the last page of the book, meaning we've done all the work there is to do. And what death comes for, all that death comes for at that point is a dead man, a dead woman, because we've lived all our life. All that death will find when it's time for us to go is a dead person, because our heartbeat filled all the pages of our book. Our life was lived to the fullest. And if someone tells us you are of less value, men value youth and beauty, like Pearl often says, Pearl Davis, or men want this. If we've been hurt and we have the scars and we have the age, naturally we're going to be triggered, because we're being told less value. We're being told you've missed it. Who wants to be told when they're already conscious or subconsciously dealing with existential fears. Your time's running out. You're getting older. Your value's going down. The life that your youthful years were wasted. Value matters. Meaning of life. Naturally, people will be triggered, and this is going to kick people hardcore because it's existential. We want to matter. So my practical takeaway, and I'm not going to go too deep today. Subscribe, stay tuned for the next video. My takeaway today is what he's saying so far is true. There's no lies detected here, no cap. I feel like this is accurate. But, and I'll focus on the women for a moment. As a woman, in dealing with the fact, coming to accept that there are years we can never get back, that there are things we should have done differently, that there's trauma and scars for many of us. In that space, of staying in that space and allowing ourselves to feel those fears and those feelings, there needs to be room to come to grieve them and accept them. And even grieve has processes where we at first are in denial and we're angry, then we're sad. We try to negotiate our way out of it until we reach acceptance. Those are the stages of grief. But grief doesn't just occur when someone dies. It occurs in many different ways when we've been through trauma and hurt. Even these conversations, when they evoke these existential fears in you, my encouragement would be to stay in that moment, stay in that feeling, allow yourself to feel it, write down your feelings and what you're going through, and maybe write down 3 practical steps for yourself. What now? I don't just want to tell you what that looks like. And this is for the men out there too. When you feel these fears coming in, if you feel trapped with the woman that you're in and you're not getting that submission, or you're that woman not getting that love from your man, or having a hard time working through that masculine, tough facade you've had to put up, what now? Sit in those feelings, try to come to a place of accepting the place you are in the here and now. Ground yourself, touch something, smell something, ground yourself in the here and now, and write down what is that going to practically mean now. Because the life is not over. Your life can very much still matter, even if you are past that prime and you can never get those years back. In that existential fear and these feelings that these topics trigger in us, we can find steps to move forward and say, well, this is how I will find new value. This is how I can grow. This is how I can tap into my masculine or feminine energy and be whole. Because the more we're whole in ourselves, the more we will be able to approach the counterpart in our life, male, female, as we're growing from the inside out. These are phenomenal debates. Lots more coming. What do you think? What are your thoughts on what you're hearing so far? Let me know in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe, guys. There's lots more coming, different topics going all around the world to gain wisdom, to grow. Entertainment means education. So subscribe, like, comment, share, and I'll see you on the next one. Ayo!